それではラウンドテーブルを
Welcome back.
続けます。
We would like to resume the roundtable discussion.
基調講演でもご説明がありましたように、
As was
ネット
mentioned
ゼロ
at
という目
the
標に向け
keynote
て
lecture,
今後
in order
この
to
重要コー
achieve
ス
the
の
net
需要
zero
が
target,
さらに増大していく
critical
と
minerals will
い
become
う
more
中
and
で
more
安定
important
供
going
給
forward.
に向けまして二国間と国間
And
のさまざまな
bilateral
取
and
り組みが進
multilateral
められているところ
initiatives
ですけれど
for
も、課題も
supply,
不定一筋
stable
縄で
supply
はご
of
ざいません。
critical minerals is
そこ
ongoing.
で最初
But
に
there
議
are
論する
many
のは
challenges and there
重
is
要
no
鉱
silver
物のサ
bullet.
プライチェーン
The
の
first
多角
topic
化にお
of
け
the
る課
discussion
題
is
とは
what are
何
the
か、
challenges
そ
in
してそ
diversifying
の課
critical
題に
mineral
対し
supply
てどの
chains?
ような取り組
And
み
what
が
are
必要なの
the
かという、ある意味基
measures that
本
we can
的
take
で
to
すけれども、
address
我々
these
の議論を進
challenges?
めていく上
So
で重要
these
な点に
are
つい
very
て、
basic points,
最初の
but
基調講演のお
also
二人のお
of
話に加えまして、
utmost
資源
importance.
国と消費国の
So
見
we would
方も
like
交え
to
て、もう少し
ask
詳しくお
the
伺いしていきたい
resource-rich
と
country and the
思います。
consuming country's
そ
perspective
れではこの
to
ツー
be
ルにつ
also
いては皆
shared.
様に順番にお伺いし
So
たいと
I would
思い
like
ます。
to
それぞれ2、
ask
3分
each
程度で
panelist to
お答えいた
respond.
だきたいと思い
Please
ます。
keep your response
ま
to
ず、清木
2,
パッ
3
ト博
minutes
士
at a
に
time.
お伺いし
Let
ま
me
す。消
first
費国の観
invite
点からの課
Dr.
題と
Keo
取り組み
Pipat.
として何が重
As
要とお
a
考えでしょう
consuming
か。
country, what are the important initiatives and what are the important challenges?
Thank you. As a consuming country, we face several hurdles in diversifying our critical mineral supply chain. First, we have quite limited resources. We don't have a significant domestic reserve of many critical minerals that needs for EV and clean energy technologies. Second, mining and processing of the critical mineral often raise environmental and social responsibility issues. Building a robust domestic processing and recycling capability for this mineral requires significant infrastructure investment since the supply chain is complex, so involve multiple stages from mining to manufacturing. So to have a diverse and resilient supply chains requires substantial investment of time, expertise, and resources. So how we try to overcome this, I would say we have to invest in diversification effort. We have to foster partnerships across the value chain. We have to engage globally, which I'm doing now today, and we have to focus on innovation and build a future-ready workforce. And I would like to be quick on the diversification efforts. I think sometimes when we talk about diversification of sources and you don't want to depend on a single source of import or source of raw material. But then looking at critical raw material as the keynote speakers show us, there are not many countries, maybe about 10 countries of how many countries in the world. So that's kind of difficult in terms of diversification efforts, But for us, we aim to diversify our sources by achieving the developing many domestic resource by investment in overseas mining projects and establishing partnership with other countries. That's what we aim for, And I think the other one is that I would like to focus on is just human capitals in these areas. It seems like we don't have much, especially in Thailand. And when we look at these technologies of exploring, manufacturing or processing of this critical mineral, and we would like to have more, or when we would like to become an investment destination, we would like to make sure that we have enough human capital, skill one, to serve the company that come to invest in our countries. And I think I have that for now. Thank you.
どうもありがとうございます。続いて、
Thank you very
テクノ
much.
課長にお伺い
Next,
し
let
ます。
me
先
invite
ほども
Mr.
ご紹
Techno.
介がありましたように、アメリカ
As
は
was
鉱
mentioned,
物安全保障パ
the
ートナー
United
シップ
States have
MSP を立
launched
ち上げまして、
MSP
サプ
Mineral
ライチェーン
Security
の構築
Partnership
に取り組んでおります。特
and
に
is working
ESG
toward
に
building the critical
強調
mineral
されて
supply
いる
chain
取り組みだと思いますけれど
and
も、
with a
こ
big
うした
focus on
取り組みを
ESG.
通じてどのよう
I
な
would
課
like
題
to
があって、
ask
ど
what
のよ
are
うな
the
取り組
challenges
み
that you have
が
been
必要と
seeing
考
through
えて
these
おられますでしょ
efforts
うか。
and what initiatives you are taking.
Thank you. So I'll take this opportunity to highlight some of the challenges under the recycling pillar of the Mineral Security Partnership. E-waste recycling presents unique challenges compared to more established recycling streams, and the United States and the international community need to do better. Technology for recycling and critical mineral extraction from e-waste and batteries is ready for scale up and commercial deployment, but it's challenged by low e-waste and battery collection rates in the United States and across the world. Also, there is need to improve management of mine waste, a potential source of important critical minerals needed to diversify supply chains. In the United States, the guidance and policies for extracting critical minerals that can be sold for a profit to offset costs at an abandoned mine under the authority of site cleanup. All of this is relatively new territory, and we're still developing the sort of rules and framework for that. So it's imperative that we continue to work with and encourage innovation within the private sector to implement extraction of critical minerals from mine waste. There are success stories already that we can point to in order to grow this sector. For example, in 2021, Missouri Cobalt started production of cobalt, nickel, and copper from existing mine tailings in the United States, even before the subsurface excavation started. Through the Mineral Security Partnership, we hope to work with Japan and other partners to improve conditions for making recycling economically feasible and determine how the Mineral Security Partnership can support recyclers to establish collection and processing centers for the recovery of critical minerals. Thank you.
どうもありがとうございます。
Thank you very
続
much.
いてシディック博士にお伺いします。資源国
Thank you
か
very
ら見
much.
て
Next
特
question
に
is
重
to
要
Dr.
な課題
Shiddick.
と
So
取り
from
組
the
みとして
perspective of the
何
resource-rich
が
country,
必要とお考
what
え
are
で
the
しょうか。お願い
challenges
し
and
ま
what are the
す。
needed measures?
Thank you, moderator. As producing country, certainly we are also facing challenge diversifying critical mineral supply chains. As my capacity in the upstream side of the supply chains, which consists of exploration, mining, and processing of ore into the base metal. Challenges lie on the financing and technology and law enforcement, especially related to environmental issue. And on financing, there is a limitation of funding for exploration for new deposit to critical minerals such as nickel, cobalt, lithium, or even graphite. These are critical minerals essential for produce the nickel-based battery. There are very limited greenfield exploration in Indonesia, while there are some potential are available. It is crucial for us to enhance the resource estimation to assess the quality and quantity of our mineral deposit accurately. This issue at the upstream can lead the supply chains disrupt in a whole line of supply chains if not addressed properly as demand for mineral is predicted to be higher each year to accelerate to clean energy transition. To address this, we will have new regulation that we will allow junior mining companies to take a part in greenfield exploration to enhance our research discovery. But still, investment is needed in this particular area. Another challenge on processing technology, as the race toward cleaner transportation escalating, Indonesia aims to take a part in the EV ecosystem development by supplying the nickel-based battery storage. However, in order to do, we'll need to discover more nickel type 1, then we'll be converted to nickel sulfide and cobalt sulfide as a crucial component to make a precursor battery pack on the energy storage. Producing nickel sulfide and cobalt sulfide can only be done in HPAL processing, which is still rare in Indonesia. HPAL-based processing will produce tiling or waste that should be managed properly to avoid polluting and the environmental, which is also a challenge for Indonesia. To overcome these two main challenges, we need to explore cooperation on funding mechanism with partner country as well as on the technology aspect. In addition to technology for processing, I think it's also important to develop technology that will enhance the efficiency of our resource, such as digitalization and automation, in addition to tiling management. Compared to downstream, mineral supply chain is quite mature at the upstream line, but we need to pursue more midstream and downstream industry if we are to develop the nickel-based battery industry. That is an area where more international cooperation and investment is mostly needed at the moment. I think that's.
どうもありがとうございます。
Thank you very much
3
for
人
the
のパネリスト
comment.
からですね、
So the three
非常に
panelists
異
made
なる切り口か
comments
ら
from different
課
perspectives.
題についてご指摘があ
Challenges
ったと思
were
い
pointed
ます。
out.
私から一つずつお答えしてい
And
くとちょっと時間も足りませんの
with
で、
the
せっ
interest
か
of
く来て
time,
い
I'm
ただ
not
いてい
going
る
to
専門
respond
家のお
to
二人か
each of
ら
the points,
の
but
コメント
to
もしあ
two
ればいただ
experts,
きたい
if you
と
have comments,
思い
we'd
ま
like
すけ
to
れども、
hear
プレ
comments
ス
from
局
two
長
experts.
と九
Ms.
谷
Press
研究
and
員にも
Mr.
同
Kutani,
じ質問をお伺い
same
したいと思い
question,
ます。この
meaning
サプライチェーンの多角化にお
for
ける
the
課題と
diversification of
取り
the
組みにつ
supply
い
chain,
て、
what are the
基調講演で
challenges
も
and
すで
measures?
に触れ
And
て
you
い
have
ただい
already
ており
touched
ます
upon
けれど
those
も、
points in your
これま
keynotes,
での3人の
but
パネリ
the
ストからのご指
after
摘
hearing
も
the
踏まえま
points
し
from
て、
the three panelists,
特に重要と考えてい
if you could share your
る部
comments on
分な
points
どについ
made
てもご
or
意
on
見いただけれ
particularly
ばと
important
思い
challenges
ます。
or initiatives
ま
that
ず
would be
はプレス
appreciated.
局長お願い
First,
いた
Ms.
します。
Press, could you go first?
Yeah, thank you. I want to, it's really easy to talk about challenges because there's so many of them, and a lot less easy to talk about solutions because they're not that straightforward. But I want to bring another element that we really didn't discuss until now is in addition to geographical concentration, we also have a private sector concentration. There is about 25 companies, 3 of which are state-owned. The rest of them are just commercial companies who actually control the market in this space. And I was just checking my numbers now, so that the top 5 mining companies control 61% of lithium output and 56% of cobalt output. So that concentration also we need to think about when the policymakers are discussing this, to understand where the point of influence can be and how this can be managed. Part of the diversification strategy can be support for countries who don't have a capability to do geological exploration, because the reserves are plenty. There is plenty of potential around the world, but what can, especially in Africa, for instance, there is a real requirement to help with the geological exploration. And also, as we look at these strategies, is to understand that it's not only the geographical and mining processing concentration that matters. We will see a lot more climate impacts as we go forward. Both in terms of what sort of trade will take place, and the shorter supply chains, the better, because that obviously increases resilience. The second aspect of it is also the deterioration of ore and the risks that come out of water usage, because we know that mining and processing is actually energy and water intensive. So having a little bit more capability or collecting our knowledge to be more comprehensive as we diversify and supply chains and go into new areas, to really have this upfront assessment, so we don't shortcut, but we don't introduce new risks, but really try to be more resilient, more mindful of long-term impacts, and more considerate of the local footprint, with a full understanding where the boundaries are for policymakers and where the private sector kicks in. Thank you.
ありがとうございます。これまで地理的な偏在についてはたくさん議論があり
So
ました
far,
けれ
as
ども、
for the
企業につい
geological
ての
unevenness, it was talked about, but there are also focus of supply among companies, which was not talked about much. So I think it's a very important point. Next, I would like to ask Mr. Kutani the same question.
日本語で大丈夫ですかね。
Is it okay to speak in Japanese?
大丈夫です。
It's okay to speak in Japanese.
と 私からはですね、エネルギーを専門としていますので、そ
Since
のアナロジー
my
で2
expertise
点
is
指摘したい
energy,
と思いま
so I
す。
would like to point out
一つ目
two
はです
points
ね、
using analogy. First,
今の市場に対する認識、そ
so
れから
awareness
将来の
of
見
the
通しに
market
対する認識をですね、
and
多くの
awareness
方
of the
と
future
共有してい
outlook
くということが非
that
常に
needs
重
to
要
be
になって
shared
きます。
among many people. That will
供
be
給
very
源を多様
important.
化するというこ
So
とは新
diversifying
しい投資
supply
が必要なんで
sources
すけども、それを
means
実現
new
する際
investment will
に
be required.
今
And in
マーケ
order
ッ
to
トがどう
realize
なっ
that,
ていて、この
what is
先どう
the
いう
current
需要が
market
出てくるの
situation
か、
and what kind
そ
of
れをです
demand
ね、
will
売
we
る側と
expect
買う
in the
側双
future?
方の
So
認識を
buyers
使
and
っ
the
ていか
seller
ない
side,
と
the
うまくい
awareness
かないん
must
で
be
すよね。
aligned. Otherwise, things
そ
will
のた
not
め
be
の取り組み
successful.
をこの鉱物の世
And
界でも進めてい
initiatives
くことが
for
必
that
要だと
need
思
to
い
be
ます。一つ
proceeded
例を挙げます
in
と、エ
this
ネルギーの
mineral
世界
area.
で
One
は、
example, in
ジ
the
ョイン
energy
トオイ
world,
ルデータイニシア
joint
チブ
oil
という取
data
り組みがあります。
initiative
これは世界の
is
石
available.
油の生産、
What
貿
it means
易、
is
在
the
庫のですね、データを
manufacturing,
ですね、み
export,
んな
and
が出し合っ
inventory
て、
of
デ
crude
ータベ
oil
ースを毎月
is
毎月更
supplied
新
by
していこ
everyone,
う
and
というも
database
ので
is
す。
to be updated
これ
every
によって
month.
ですね、今世
With
界の需
this
給バランスがどうなっている
initiative,
のか、
you are able to see the
次にどういう
demand-supply
ふうに
balance
変わ
in
っ
the
ていきそうな
world
の
and
か
how
とい
will
う
it
ことをですね、みんな
change
が透明性を持って
subsequently.
確認す
So
ることが
everyone
でき
will
ます。
be able to
こう
confirm
いっ
the
たことをで
situation
す
with
ね、鉱物の世
transparency.
界でも必要なのかということ
That
です。
kind of thing will be
で、
required
もう
in
一
the
点はです
mineral
ね、
world as well.
日
Another
本は
thing,
その世界でも比較的
in
早
the
い段
world,
階で
in the
LNG の輸
early
入を開始
stage,
したんですけど
Japan
も、
started
当時
importing
マーケットが
LNG.
なかったで
Back
す。
then, the LNG
で、
market
どうや
was
って
not
この巨大
available.
な投資を実現したか
And
と言
we
います
thought,
と、
how did
売
we
り主ア
realize
メリ
this
カの企
huge
業と、
investment
それから
with a
買い主
buyer,
日
the
本の
US
企業はです
company,
ね、
with a
双
seller, the
方
US
が売る
company,
こと、
and
買
a
うことを
buyer,
コミッ
Japanese
トし合う
company,
ことによって、大き
mutually
な投
committed
資を
each
実
other
現し
about
ま
the
した。
purchase and realized a
これ
big
は民間
investment.
企業のですね、意思決定によりますので、非常に難しいと
So
ころで
this
はあ
is
るんですけ
based
ど
on
も、
the
売りと
private,
買
the
い手が双
company's
方にです
decision
ね、
making. So it's not that
生
easy, but
産
the
と
buyer and
買う
seller
ことにコミットしていくというこ
made
とが重要だ
commitment
と思い
for
ま
the
す。
production and purchase. I think that commitment is very important. That's all.
どうもありがとうござい
Thank you
ます。
very much for that.
ちょっと時間が押してきてはい
Since
ます
we
けれども、
pressed
も
with
う
time,
少し
but
議論を
we
続けたい
want to
と
continue our
思いま
discussion.
す。次のテーマに
Next
移りながら
theme,
ですね、
while we move
少
on to the
し
next
それ
theme,
ぞれの課題についての議
we
論を
want
深めたい
to
と思いますけれど
deepen
も、
the
スライ
discussion
ド
of each
大丈夫でしょうか。はい。
challenge. Are we ready? The
じゃあ
next
次のテーマは
slide.
ですね、
Next
これまで
theme.
も国際的な協力あるいはパートナーシップが
So,
必要で
so
あると
far,
いう
we
ご指
talked
摘が
about
い
the
くつも
need
ご
of
ざいまして
international
でしたけ
cooperation
れ
and
ども、
partnership,
え
which was
この
pointed
課
out.
題取り組みにおいてどのような
So
国
in
際
this
協力、
initiative
パー
and
トナーシップを
challenges,
促進
what
すべきかと
international
いう
cooperation
点
and
につい
partnership
て
should be
議論したい
promoted
と思います。
to
これ
establish
まで
sustainable and
様々
resilient
なご
supply
指摘
chains
が
of
あった
critical
中でですね、
minerals.
サ
Various
ステイナ
points
ビリテ
have
ィと
been
レジリエンスというの
raised,
が、ある意味
and
重要なキーワード
sustainability
かな
and
という
resilience,
ふ
I
うに
believe,
思
is
い
an
ます。
important
サステイナ
keyword.
ビリティという点では、
In terms of
何人ものパネ
sustainability,
リストの方々が指
many
摘されたよう
some
に
panelists
ESG が
talked about the
重要であるという
sustainability,
ことです
and
ね。
the ESG
ク
is
リーンなエネルギーを
important.
増やすために
In
鉱
order
物
to
開発
increase
で
clean
環境を破
energy
壊して
in
は
the
なら
mineral
ないと
development, we should
いう
not
ことに加え
destroy
ま
the
して、
environment. In
プロジェク
addition,
トの継続性という
the
意味でもしっ
continuity
かりし
of
た
a
水準の
project
ESG を確保してい
requires
く
a
こと
certain
が
level
必
of
要だと指摘されてい
ESG.
ます。レジリエンスということは、これは
As
供
for
給が安定してい
resilience,
て、ショックに
it
強い
means
と
as supply
いうこ
is
とですけれど
stable
も、
and it's
供
very
給の安
strong
定とい
to
う点で
shock.
は、サス
And
テイ
in
ナビリ
terms
テ
of
ィとも
stability of
関連す
supply,
るという
it
ことかと
relates
思
to
います。
sustainability as
先ほ
well.
ど、久谷研究理事からご指摘のあった市場
Mr.
の見通しと
Kutani
需給
talked
の関
about
係、
the
そうした
forecast
こと
of
も踏まえ
market
まし
and
て、
demand
十分
supply
な量が確保
situation.
されるということがまず重要になります。
First and
そ
foremost,
の
it is
上で、
important to secure a
先ほど
certain
から供
amount
給
of enough amount of minerals, and there is an unevenness of the supply side is also an issue. And to have alternative supply source is important. And reliable resource supply is also important in terms of resilience. And Mr. Kutani also pointed out in the keynote address, supply chain is based on trade, so stable trade is important. And as Director Press talked about, the transparency of the market needs to be secured. So given this backdrop, as a next point, as you can see on the screen, we would like to talk about international cooperation and partnership by bearing in mind the keywords of sustainability and resilience. What kind of cooperation and partnership international community should promote? So I would like to reverse the sequence. So first, I would like to ask Mr. Kutani to talk about the sustainability and resilience of supply chain. What should international community cooperate? What are the points?
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you
まあ
very
この
much.
持続可能性をどうやって測定するのかとい
How
う
do we
問題が
measure
一つあると思います。
sustainability? This is one point.
まあその基準をですね、定めて、
We need to define the
多くの国
criteria
でそれ
of
を
that,
適用していくとい
and
う
we
こ
need
と
to
がまず
apply
基本だ
that
と思い
in
ます。
many countries. That will be the
その
basic
際に気をつけ
approach.
ないといけない
And
の
what we have
は
to be mindful when we
2つあ
do
ると思い
that
まして、
are
一つはです
twofold.
ね、それ
First,
に遵守する国をなるべく多く
we want to
得ていく。なるべく多く
involve
の国の
as many
参加を得ていくということで
countries
ござい
as
ます。
possible to
そうしなければです
participate
ね、
in
特
that
定の
initiative,
国
to
で
abide
先
by that
行して
initiative.
ESG 基準が
If
強くなってい
some
きますと、
countries have
カーボン
enhanced
リーケージ
ESG
ですね、
criteria,
ESG リーケージ
then
が
just
産
like
業で
carbon
起こりかねない
leakage,
という
ESG
ふうに思い
leakage
ます。
could occur in
ESG 基準
industry.
の厳しい国イコール、
So those
コ
countries
スト
who
の
have a
高い
stringent
国、
ESG
そこから産業が
criteria
出
could
てい
be
く
a
ということが
high
起こり得ま
cost
す。
country,
それを
and
回避する
that
ためにですね、
country
なる
may
べく
have a
多くの
outflow of
国に参
industry.
加し
To
てもらう
avoid
と
that,
いうこと
it
が大事
is
だと思います。
important to
同
involve
じ
as
観
many
点からで
countries
す
as
ね、
possible. And
最
looking
初か
from
ら
the
非
same
常に厳し
perspective,
い ESG 基準を当てはめてしまいます
if
と、
we apply very
それには
stringent
ついていけ
ESG
ないと
criteria
いう
from
国
the
も出て
beginning,
くるんだと
there
思
could
い
be
ます。
some countries who are
そう
not
いう
able
ことが
to
ないよう
catch
に
up
で
with
すね、
that stringent
少し
criteria.
緩やかな
To
ところから
avoid that
始め
situation
て、
from
だ
happening,
んだん
perhaps we
と
can start
強
from
化し
the
ていくと
loose
い
type
うような
of
スタンスを取る
ESG
方がい
and
いと
then
思います。
gradually
これもやはりですね、
strengthen or
CO2 排出という観
the
点から
level of
は、
ESG.
当
Looking
初、
from the
京都
emission
議
of
定書があったんですけども、
CO2, we
非
had
常
a
に
Kyoto
厳しかったが
Protocol
ゆえにで
originally,
す
but
ね、
because it was
参
so
加国の
stringent,
多くが、多くの
therefore
参加
many
が得ら
of
れなかった
the
という問題がありました。
parties were not
一
able
方、
to
ボランタ
abide
リ
by
ーな
that.
コミットメントであればでき
Now,
ると
if
いう
it
こ
is a
とで、
voluntary
パリ協
commitment
定
that
で
is
は非常に多くの
possible,
国が
that is
参加
why
し
in
ま
the
した。
Paris Agreement,
このよう
many
にですね、
many
参加しや
countries
すい基準
participated in that.
を定めてい
So
くという
we
こと
need
が
to
大事になるという
define
ふうに思
a
います。
criteria that will facilitate a lot of countries'
どうもあ
participation.
りがとうござい
Thank you
ます。
very much.
ESG 基準について本当に
Thank you very
重要な
much.
点で、
ESG
一方で
is
それ
an
が
extremely
本当に
important
守られるの
standard,
か、あるい
and
はコスト面で大丈夫なのかとい
whether
った
this is
点
going to
にもあるか
be
と思い
really
ますので、
complied with, or does
と
it?
にかく、できることから始めていくっていうのは一つの
So I think
やり
starting
方だという
from
ご指摘
where we
だと思います。
can
ありが
is
とうござ
one
います。
valuable insight.
続
Thank
き
you
ま
very
し
much.
て、プレス局長、
Next, I'd like to
国際
invite
協力
Ms.
とパー
Press
トナーシップと
with
いう観点
regards
から
to
お願いしま
international
す。
collaboration and partnership, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for us, as I mentioned, because we're a global institution, we have 169 countries plus EU as members. So our work in this regard is shaped from that angle. We have a collaborative framework on critical materials, which has three main pillars of cooperation. So the first pillar is an observatory to really understand what is happening around the world, both in terms of what exists and what is coming on stream and what the potentials are. The second pillar of it is a technology pillar, really to be on the top of global innovation, to understand the trends and also to see how it's going to influence demand. And the third pillar is around the strategies around the standards and ESG. In our opinion, ESG is not enough. It really has to go a little bit more than broader than ESG. But also, we cannot be naive and think that somehow top-down standard will be imposed and that everybody will abide by it. So at this point in time, we are trying to collect best practice to understand what exists and see how we can harmonize at least some of the elements. And this will also feed into the work of the Secretary General's panel on critical materials, so a bit more granular information. What is going to be really necessary I think everybody understands that nobody can do it on their own. So we all have to chip in. I mean, I showed you the slide with 51 materials that we consider critical. I think Indonesia mentioned a lot more what they could. This is just in energy transition, and when you look across the economy, it's very large space. So this international cooperation at all levels and ensuring that we do things differently, because if we do the same thing that was done in the past with the mining, and it's not it's going to have consequences, large consequences for all of us. So this commitment to do things differently, and to use the mechanism that we have, because we have international organizations, we have regional entities that can really shift the needle on this, and align and exchange information will be very critical as we advance policy development. I know I'm taking a lot of space, but I want to mention one thing, which we see a lot of discussion, especially in the context of OECD countries, around stockpiling, for instance. We need to understand what it means for the global energy transition, because the market is tight, and what sort of impact is stockpiling going to have on countries who cannot afford to stockpile for their own needs. So I think we need to be very careful how we shape these policies and understand the consequences of the national policy, regional policy versus the global policy, and understand the trade-offs and risks involved.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very
やっぱり、
much.
イノベーションと ESG っていうのは、
Innovation
今後も
and
引き続き
ESG
まだまだハードルは高いんですけれ
will
ども、
be the
こ
major
れからどんどん
pillars,
取り組まなければいけない
although
という
there are
課
many
題で
challenges
あると
in front of
ご
us.
指摘だったと
Thank you very
思いま
much
す。
for your
続きまし
insight.
て、
Next,
ティッ
let
ク
me
の課長に
turn
もお伺い
to
した
Mr.
いと思い
Techno.
ます。これまで2人のパネリスト
We
から
have
もその
heard from the two
ESG の
panelists
重要性と
regarding the
いうご
importance
発言が
of
ございまして、
ESG,
先ほどの
and
ティックの課長のご発言から
you
も
also
リサイク
rightly
ルであると
mentioned the
か
importance of
MSP が
recycling
取り組んでいる
and the
ESG の重要性といった点についても
how
ご指摘あっ
important
たかと
ESG
思い
is
ます。
in the MSP.
そうしたことも踏まえまして、
So,
国際
on
協
that
力、国
note,
際的なパートナーシッ
can
プ
you
とし
also
て
comment on
重要
international
な点に
cooperation
つ
and
いて
partnerships
お
and
考えを
what
お聞
you
かせくださ
consider
い。
to be important?
Thank you. I think I would start with ESG, as you've mentioned ESG a few times. I think collaboration in this area is really critically important. As I mentioned earlier, it is one of the pillars of our mineral security partnership. It's one of the principles that drives our sort of different approach to partnering on mineral security. And increasingly, I find that it's being recognized in discussions on mining as a key component of the mining conversation. And so whether it's in the international governmental forum on mining, or whether it's in other bilateral or multilateral discussions, ESG is definitely a part of that discussion. And why is that? Because transparency, risk mitigation, public engagement, trust essentially is key for the success of these critical mineral projects. So just starting with that, the collaboration that I think we see internationally in this space is really fundamental to the underlying trust that's needed for the sector to deliver what we need it to deliver. There are other areas that I would point to in terms of collaboration, and that would be in collection and transportation and recycling of e-waste, the investment in infrastructure that's needed to facilitate collection and processing of e-waste for the recovery of these minerals is going to require collaborative solutions and investment in different kinds of forms. As part of this effort, we need to talk about recycling hubs that can pool collection as well as the investment that's needed for these recycling on a bigger scale to work. And that, of course, involves transportation and processing efforts that, again, require collaborative approaches. There's a need to advance for more advanced recycling technologies, as has been talked about earlier, and that requires not only investment but innovative thinking. I mentioned earlier that the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States and the infrastructure law has invested billions of dollars to tackle recycling critical minerals from electronic and battery waste in an environmentally sound way that meets those ESG standards. And we look forward to partnerships that can help with that effort. Public participation is really, really key. That's a little bit different from ESG, but or at least the environmental part of ESG. But we've seen around the world that without the public participation in e-waste recycling and the critical mineral space generally, that projects can fail, and so that's really, really key to raise awareness, as has been talked about, and to ensure that there is public participation. I would encourage countries considering developing extended producer responsibility agreements or EPRs for end-of-life electronic management need to ensure that they require clarity and consideration of transboundary movement in the global market. And as for the recycling of mine tailings, I've talked about that before, that there is a space for international cooperation there as well. There are, I think, many environmental advantages in recycling materials from rock pile, from tailings, from slag, from existing and legacy mines, and they can be used in many different forms. In the United States, for example, there's a mine in Konnecticut, Rio Tinto, is extracting tellurium from mine waste in the United States. So, I mean, this is one of the areas that we need to look at and need to collaborate in terms of the technology, in terms of the good examples out there. There are, I think, a lot of opportunities in co-locating e-waste collection sites with the smelters themselves. That reduces the need for transportation and the risk that goes with that as well. Finally, in addition to the partnerships through the Mineral Security Partnership, and I would say that there are 7 MSP projects that either are announced or are in planning stages that involve recycling or mineral extraction from mine waste. So it's very much a part of the MSP already. But in addition to those, we're working through other multilateral settings, or I should say multilateral settings, like I mentioned, the Intergovernmental Forum. The United States recently joined that in the last few years, and also UN systems. We just finished the UNEA 6 that had a big discussion about critical minerals. I think we're going to continue to see that growing multilateral focus. Also in trade issues, I've talked about critical minerals myself actually in trade talks with several countries in Latin America in the last 6 months. I know that the IPEF agreement has a critical minerals track that's coming up. And so we're engaging in all these areas and with individual partners as well, such as with Japan through the U.S.-Japan Critical Minerals Agreement. And so there are many different forums that I think we're all seeing that the challenges with critical minerals require international collaboration, international discussions, and solutions. I'll stop there. Thank you.
どうもありがとうございます。リサイクルについ
Thank
て
you
い
very
ろん
much.
な
So
視
on
点から協
recycling,
力の可能性について
we discussed a
研究してい
potential
ただき
for
ま
the
した。ま
collaboration
た
from
冒
different
頭におっしゃった
perspectives, and
信
also
頼性トラストと
the
いう点
trust
はやは
that you
り
mentioned
サ
at
プ
the
ライチェーンの
onset.
レジリエンスの
This
た
is
めに
very
非常に大事な
important
こと
for
か
the
と思い
resilience
ま
of
す。
supply
いき
chain
なり供給が途絶えるとい
and
う
the
ようなことがない、あるいはそうしたことを
the
防ぐ
stopping
た
of
めに
the
は
abrupt
信
stopping
頼
of
性
the
というのは重
supply
要な要素になっ
needs
て
to be
くるの
avoided.
かなと
For that,
思
the
いま
trust
す。
is a very
そ
important
れ
element.
ではまた同じ質
Now,
問を
same
ですね、
question
シディック博
to
士、
Dr.
キ
Shidid
オフパット博士に
and
もそ
also
れぞ
to
れ
the
お
Dr.
伺いしたいと
Kilfud.
思います。
And maybe I'd like to ask Dr. Shidit to go first. As a producing countries, you talked about the importance of investment earlier. And in relation to that or other points, could you talk about the international collaboration, partnership? What are important for that?
Thank you. Thank you. From the perspective of a country with large mineral resource, of course, we expect all industry players to always comply with ESG standard in the whole line of operation. In Indonesia, although the government does not endorse certain type of international ESG standard, such as one promoted by ICMM or IRMA, but we have on technical regulation on good mining practice at the upstream of the supply chains that basically has similar aspect to those international practice. The good mining practice consists of guideline on environmental management, conservation, waste management, and health and safety. There are benefits that we can get when we have a high compliance to the ESG aspect. First, we can have access to larger market. We can access premium market where buyer prioritize responsibly source material and secure long-term contract. Example for this would be product marketed by Freeport Indonesia or Vale Indonesia that has been widely recognized as copper and nickel with responsible sourcing. Second, I believe a country with ESG standard will attract more investment from international mining companies as well as renowned finance institution. The country that demonstrates the trend right now that investors are more leaning toward funding project in countries that demonstrate a high commitment to ESG by taking care the environmental and the people. That the environmental issue is highly crucial to critical mineral. Proper ESG standard can minimize the environmental footprint of critical mineral extraction and processing activity. When a company implement the best practice in environmental management and protect natural resource, it is easier to them to get social license to operate. Last thing, social license is crucial in supporting a sustainable business. Responsible mining practice should prioritize community engagement that will have positive social impact to the people through improved infrastructure, healthcare, education, and community empowerment. In this case, complying with high ESG standard will not only benefit the business but also bring advantage for local community in the mining proximity by promoting sustainable development, creating a job opportunity, enhance livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment. So the best practice related to environment, which was also mentioned by Ms. Press and others as well. They also touched upon best practice. So sharing best practice is something that can be more easily started compared to other measures, especially with international organizations or other stakeholders can effectively facilitate sharing of the best practice, and I hope that would happen. And also, you talked about local communities. The benefit to the local community is very important. And Mr. Tikno also talked about the public participation, and I think this is to do with that. They're interlinked. Thank you very much for your comment. Now, Dr. Kyokpat, also on the same topic with regards to international collaboration and partnership, what are most important?
Thank you. I think international collaboration on this area is also important. I think it's a must in terms of to promote social sustainability of the mining practice, because I don't know, I think maybe it's a common knowledge or common of the mining business that we are bad guy in everywhere, you know. We are a bad guy and nobody wants to, well, everybody realize that everyday use you involve with mineral and metals, you know, everything in this room is come from mining, but nobody wants mine to be too close to their house or their area, you know. And I think the public awareness is also important. It even with mining mineral facility or recycling facility, you know. And in Thailand, we try to promote this practice in terms of mining facility. We promote that we encourage the companies to use the mining 4.0 using technologies and with the advanced technology so that they produce less carbon. And then we also have green and smart mining award to encourage them to apply. And this green and smart mining award is we look into the governance, we look into the environmental practice, we look into the relationship with them with the community and also with the labor management. And it's pretty much is kind of in the sense of a ESG, but it's with the ESG with so many areas, you know, like 10 areas. So then we try with that. And even with the, in terms of regional approach, like I have the ASEAN family here. So we in ASEAN, we have the ASEAN Mineral Awards that we give out every 2 years, you know, and that initiative is just to convince or to promote the mining practice in the region that is social responsibility, you know, that is they have best practice so that they can share and then try to convince other company in other members to do that too. And I think last year, if I'm not mistaken, is the company from Philippines won the award, right? Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
ありがとうございます。ソーシャルレスポンシビリティということで、やっぱ
Thank
り
you very much. Social
社会が提
responsibility.
起する責任がある取り組みが必
So
要だ
the
と。
responsible
これ
initiatives
ま
that
で
will be
の議事
conducive
からも
for
指
the
摘があり
society
ま
is
したけ
very
れども、やっぱり
important.
そう
That
した
was
側面をきちん
pointed
と
out.
手当
So
てしなが
such
ら、
aspects need to be addressed
そのための協
and
力が必要であ
pursued,
ると
and the
いうご指摘
collaboration
があ
for
ったか
that
と
is
思い
required.
ます。
I think those are the points raised.
時間が迫ってきましたので、
So
最後
we
に
are
質
pressed
疑応
with
答
time, so we would
時
like
間
to
が限られていますけれども、に
move on
移
to
りたいと
Q&A
思
session,
いま
though the
す。
time is
その
limited.
前にもしパネリ
Before
ストの
that,
皆様からですね、
from the
他のパネ
panelists,
リストのご発言を受けて、
based
この
on
点はどう
the
してもと
comments
いう
given by other
点がありまし
panelists,
たら、
if
今の
you
うちに
have
ご
an
指摘いた
urgent
だいた
point
いた
that
だ
you
き
would
たい
like
と
to
思いますけ
mention,
れ
I
ど
would
も、
like to ask you
よろしい
to
でしょ
do
う
so
か。
now.
よろしければでは、
If not,
質疑応答に
let's
移
move
り
on
た
to
いと思い
Q&A
ます。
session.
オンラインで、まずいくつかいただい
So
ている質問
online,
の中から、
we have received some
すべ
questions.
て取り上げ
We
ら
will
れる
not
か
be able
わから
to
ないんですけれども、
cover all questions, but
まず取り上げていきたいと思い
let
ま
us
す。
try to answer to
一
some of
つ
the
目が
questions
です
raised
ね、
online. First question.
これ英語で質問いただいてます
This
の
is
で、英
a
語で
question
読み上
in
げます。
English, so let me read in English.
When discussing critical minerals, especially mining, how are we addressing the issues of justice, equity, and inclusivity? So, このご質問は、先ほどからの ESG の基準であると
So
か、
this relates to ESG criteria or local
ということに加えてさら
community
に
contribution to local community and access to energy. I think those aspects are covered in this
そうです
question.
ね、私からご指名
So I would like to point out
いただいてよ
the
ろしければ、プレ
person
ス局長とシ
to
リック博士
answer
にお答え
Dr.
をお願い
Press,
で
Mr.
きます
Press
でしょう
and
か。
Dr.
プレス
Silik.
局長いか
May
が
I
でしょう
ask
か。
Mr. Press, may I have your view? Miss Press, may I have your view, please?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's absolutely it's a fundamental question for the conversation we are having right now, and it was really interesting to hear from Thailand how the ASEAN is approaching some of these things and what the incentives are. I think it's widely recognized. First of all, the legacy of mining is widely recognized. Secondly, the importance of community engagement is widely recognized. But to be very honest, we still have a long way to go. So the key issue will be for both on the supply side at the country level to have a regulation and policy that actually promotes that, but also on the demand side to have a lot more visibility of how important these aspects are and to shape the market from a demand side. I always mention that if you remember in some 90s or whatever, when we had issues around the fashion industry and how the demand side really influenced the way the fashion industry evolved in the context of supply chain, because energy is everybody's business today. It's a lot more visible. People use devices that they're linked to this supply chain. I think we can do a lot more also from a demand side to educate consumers and to have this public pressure to work for both sides. On the one side, regulation and policy, on the other side, the demand side, awareness and public pressure to change the practices that we have.
ありがとうございます。シディック博士、
Thank
い
you
か
very
がで
much,
しょうか。
Dr.
もう一度質
Sidik.
問
May I
読み
have
上げ
your
ます
view?
と
I will read English again.
when discussing critical minerals, especially mining, how are we addressing the issues of justice, equity, and inclusivity? そう、シディック博士、いかがでしょうか。
Thank you very much. I think we try to not to inclusivity
The
about.
mic. You need to turn the mic.
Yeah, we try to not inclusivity about the mineral, but only we have our maximum to added value for our mineral to our country. But I think it's not issue to we are limited access our export our mineral, but we can have added value for our country and our people to have more value from our resources. Thank you.
どうもありがとうございま
Thank
す。
you very much
時
indeed.
間が迫ってきてますけれども、もし、
Time is
フロアで参
pressing,
加されている
but
方何
if
かいらっしゃい
there
ますが、
are
フロアから
any
ご質問があれ
questions
ば、
from the
挙手を
floor,
お
we
願い
have
します。ど
audience
な
in
た
the
かいらっし
venue
ゃいま
as
すでしょう
well. If you have a question, please do raise your hand.
よろしいですか。
No
そ
one?
れでは、
Did I see a hand?
Introducing myself as Dr. Sandeep Kumar Roy, Deputy Director General, Geological Survey of India. Thank you for inviting us, and it has been a very engrossing session, and because there is a paucity of time, so I would like to press upon one or two things from the Indian perspective, like of late, there has been a paradigm shift in exploration philosophy in India, wherein actually we are doing some bulk mineral exploration throughout the time, but we shifted to critical minerals so much so that today we are doing around 170 odd critical mineral projects in geological exploration. So that's a huge amount. So now this Geological Survey of India or Ministry of Mines is trying to address the first exploration stage of the supply chain in a very big way. As well as in MSP group, we have been offered with some areas by US team. In 3 blocks, we are trying to engage with the private companies. There has been a lot of discussions on that. I would like to just have 1 or 2 questions in place very shortly. Number 1, with evolving exploration, there is a change in technology as well in the exploration. So even we are at some level in exploration technologies from the Indian perspective, there probably remains some gap in the technology in exploration, in processing, as well as in securing the supply chain downstream. So these are the scope, because India is at this stage is almost at 5 trillion economy, and it is going very fast. The economic part is very fast in India, number one. Number two, just seeing the number of, so for example, mobiles we are having, and every year if we can recycle this is more than a mine for many critical minerals. So if we can again secure with the help of this group the technologies, the ESG standards, and we just develop that initiative of Make in India. So we probably will are in for a very good and engaging partners in this forum. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much for the question and the comment, I believe. It was more of a question, a comment than a question, I believe. Was it a question? Well, thank you very much. Since time is pressing, we would like to draw this seminar to a close. We apologize if we were not able to respond to all the questions, but thank you very much for your interest. In terms of energy security, there have been much discussion over many years, but critical minerals are actually a new player in the discussion on energy security, and there is much to discuss, which we were not able to exhaust fully in this 2 hours. We're very grateful for this intensive discussion over the past 2 hours in this seminar. There was a lot of insight and takeaways that we received through this discussion, and we hope to continue this discussion going forward. Once again, thank you very much for joining us in this seminar for 2 hours. With this, we would like to close the Asia Energy Security Seminar 2024. Once again, thank you very much for joining.